we haven't really talked about your Navy SEAL time today, and I know like you did a great podcast with Pomp on that, but you had said you got in. I think we covered you got in July 2001. So on 9/11, were you in training while that was happening?
So when 9/11 happened, I had just graduated boot camp, and I had a hernia surgery, and I was supposed to fly home that day on recovery. And so I guess I was in training, but it wasn't SEAL training yet. So then from there, I went to an A school, which is basically, in my time, if you wanted to join the Navy and become a SEAL, it was almost like an advertising thing. It was, hey, nobody makes it through this pipeline, but let's advertise the shit out of it, because all the people that quit, we will put them in jobs that we have a shortage in. So you would have to pick one of those jobs that there was a shortage in the Navy before you actually went to BUD/S. So I picked one of those jobs, went through that course, and then got to BUD/S and made it through, went to the SEAL team.
How long is that process, like, approximately?
It can be...
Like, to get to BUD/S?
To get to BUD/S?
Yeah. Like, how long?
It can be pretty quick. You could probably get there in 3 months.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's not that long.
Yeah.
But like when 9/11 happens, because you said you were going to be going home that day or something, but like did that change something in you? Obviously you had committed, you wanted to do this before 9/11 happened, so like you were already obviously like wanted to represent the country and stuff like that, but did that like flip a switch in you at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it didn't hit me to the fullest extent. I mean, I was only 18, you know what I mean? Right. So I was still just an 18-year-old kid, but what it did do is I knew. I was like, all right, we're going to war.
Mm. So then you go into BUD/S a few months later. How long is BUD/S training?
If you make it through with no hiccups, 6 months.
And it's like just 6 grueling, intense months of nonstop physical, like, how much trauma can you take?
Not all of it. About the first, it's broken up into 3 different phases. You have first phase, which is what you're talking about. Then you have second phase, which is kind of what you're talking about, but that's dive phase. First phase is Hell Week and all that kind of shit, where it's horrible. So you got Hell Week, first phase. Then you've got dive phase, which is, it can be just as bad, but it's not all the time. There's some classroom. You actually have to learn how to dive and and do open circuit. Then you move into rebreather. Rebreather is where you don't have any bubbles, so you can't be detected. You learn how to plant bombs on ships, all that kind of stuff. And then you move into land warfare, demolition, and that's when you really start learning how to do demo, make bombs, use C4, use Bangalore torpedoes, TNT, data sheet, all kinds of explosives, and kind of like, I would say, basic infantry tactics. Then after you get through BUD/S, then you go to jump school, learn how to jump out of planes. Then after you get done with that, then you go to SQT, that's SEAL qualification training. SEAL qualification training is kind of when they actually turn you in. They know you have the guts that it takes to do the job, and so this is kind of like perfecting you and turning you into a special operator. Then when you get through SQT, then you show up to the team. If you show up at the team at the beginning of the cycle, then you got about another 1.5 years of training before you go out the door.
What do you mean beginning of the cycle?
So when I was in, I don't know what they're doing now. I think they've shortened the cycle, but they would have 6 months of this thing called ProDev, professional development. So that would be when you're going to individual schools, individual specialties. So you might go to a breacher's course and learn how to blow doors and shit, make entry into buildings, houses, targets, whatever. Sniper school, that thing I was telling you about with the MI6, That would be in their communication school, JTAC school. JTAC's where you're talking to fast A-10s, F-18s, stuff like that, dropping ordnance, dropping bombs. You go out to Nevada and do that stuff. All these kind of schools, right? That would be pro dev, professional development. Then you go into your workup. Your workup is when you work as a team. You kind of meet everybody in your platoon, or they call them troops now, squadron, whatever you want to call it, and you start working with your team, and everything starts getting put together. So you guys are running. It's train up. But you're doing a lot of that kind of stuff that I was talking to you about, that the CIA is kind of like checking the box to see if you can perform it. That's where you learn all these where you really learn these skills and learn your team, how they move. They learn how you move, and you basically become one, with your team. And that is everything from land warfare to CQB to mount, which is like fighting in cities. What else? Diving, over the beach, MAROPS, which is when you see the MAROPS is like the little black rubber boats that with an engine on the back. That's that stuff. How to navigate an open ocean, air ops, more jumping, fast roping out of helicopters, and then you move into. I think they called it SIT. I can't remember what they called it, and I don't remember what it stood for. But that's when you start working with other counterparts that you might be deploying with. So the SEAL team or your SEAL platoon that you're working with, you might be working with another team. Like the teams are broken up. You got West Coast teams, you got East Coast teams. Those teams can mirror each other.
Where do the numbers come in? That's what has always confused me. You're the first Navy SEAL I've had on here. But like when we hear SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 6, SEAL Team 7.
So all the odd number teams are on the West Coast out of San Diego. All the even number teams are out of Virginia.
Is there any difference in specialties that they do as far as like, I mean, at least when I've talked with SEALs in the past, obviously off camera, like it sounds like some team is like more senior than another team. Like the two that I hear, maybe I'm totally off on this, are like SEAL Teams 2 and 6 are like the prestigious ones. Is that a real thing, or is it totally just based on the coasts?
So the way it used to be broken down was each team had an area of operation. So Team 2 was Europe. Team 4 was South America. Team 3 was the Middle East. Team 1, I think, was Southeast Asia. So that's how it was originally broken up. Team 6 was your anti-terrorism team. And so they would be what you would consider the most prestigious, right?
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
A good breakdown.
Yeah, that's great.
What was the question before that?
So you were walking through the whole process, and then how you join in the cycles. You join your platoon.
So you may be. So when I was at Team 2, we mirrored Team 3, and so we would work. My platoon with Team 2 would work with a specific platoon in SEAL Team 3 because we might be working together overseas. Or you may be working with a Ranger unit, or you may be working with a Green Beret unit, and you start to get to know all these other teams, that you're going to be working with in theater being in the specific war zone that you're going to be operating in together. And that's where you start working with you start doing like FTXs, which are field training exercises, where you start working with Apaches and you start working with F-18s and A-10s and jumping out of planes and linking up with Green Beret units and linking up with Ranger units, and it's kind of like putting everything together. Everybody gets to know each other and everybody works together before you do it for real.
So you're doing work. That's something I kind of miss out on. Like in the past, you're doing work with other segments of the military early on. Like you're working with Rangers, you said, and Green Berets.
You have the potential. You don't always. I never actually worked with a Ranger team. You work with everybody, man. You work with FBI. You work with CIA. You work with NSA. You work with everybody.
That's interesting. That's not how, like, in pop culture we tend to think about it. But at the same time, like, thinking about when I see things in like movies, usually they are coming in to like cover somebody, and it's not, it's not necessarily like another SEAL team. It's like Marines on the ground or something like that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But like each team has guys who have different specialties. No, so like there's obviously a guy's specialty that you all have to be trained in a specific set of things, like obviously like handling guns, being top tier marksmen, things like that. But you have guys who are snipers, you have guys who are medics, you have guys who are breakers, right? Like at what point do you start to develop your specialty, and like how do you pick that out?
Immediately. A lot of times it's picked out for you, and it doesn't follow you throughout the entire duration of your team. So you may be a sniper you may be the lead sniper. I'll just call him the lead sniper, right? You may be the lead sniper for this rotation, meaning from you pick up the school in pro dev, you're the lead sniper in your workup, into the last portion, into the deployment, then cycle starts over. Maybe this time they're like, hey, you're going to be a communicator this time. You know what I mean? And then you go to communication school, and you learn all the different radios and how to talk to airplanes and helicopters and boats and you name it. You know what I mean? And getting your team's communications all wired, ready to go out on operations and everything. Then maybe after that rotation, they're like, hey, we're going to send you to breacher school. Then you're going to be the lead breacher, and you're going to be the lead guy, the lead explosives guy, and it just, the list just goes on and on.
What was your main area of expertise like throughout your career?
I really didn't have a specific area of expertise. I showed up late in the cycle on the first one, so I went to a bunch of bullshit schools that I'm not proud of, and not that they just weren't exciting to talk about it, and I don't want to bore people to death.
Sure.
But then the second rotation I came in, and that's when I went to that MI6 school.
Okay, so the MI6 school, just to refresh, when you first brought that up, you thought you were going to go
I thought I was
hunting
going to
in Bosnia for war criminals.
Yeah.
And this is like 02, 03, something like that?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
So this is like a whole, and you guys did a great job with this in, I think, a few of the sit-downs I've listened to where it's been guys who were over in this theater. But in the Rob O'Neill one, I remember you guys talked about like Kosovo and stuff because he was there. This to me is like a forgotten part of history.
Yeah.
But the breakup of the Soviet bloc in the 90s was fucking nuts.
Yeah.
So Bosnia, if I remember correctly, that was where like the biggest, there were a few different genocides, but that was where like the biggest genocide happened, right?
I don't know if it was the biggest, but there was a lot of it going on.
So what, like this isn't spy work, you're going in as a SEAL to like capture and...
Well, that was spy work.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Because you were getting trained by MI6. So you're going in that situation as a SEAL. Are you going in plain clothes?
Yep.
Yeah.
You're rolling around and who knows what, maybe an ice cream truck. But it was a lot of snatch and grab type work where it'd be tracking somebody, surveilling them, snatching them up, interrogating them, whatever.
But you never got to do it. You were pulled off it before.
Yep.
So was your whole team pulled off it and sent to Afghanistan, or just some of you?
Just some of us.
And this is like 03 or something. So
actually, the whole team wound up getting pulled off. Yeah, because I got pulled out to go to Afghanistan, and then those guys were over there, but then they got pulled out into Baghdad, and then my team left Afghanistan, so I volunteered to go to Baghdad to jump in with my sister platoon, who were the guys that were going to Bosnia, and then we did a lot of sniper work.
Got it. So they pulled you in. This is just interesting timing. It seems like they pulled you into Afghanistan when Iraq was taken off, like first.
Well, everything was taken off. So I went to Afghanistan, right? Do you remember the movie? Did you ever watch that movie, The Lone Survivor?
Of course. Yeah.
So my platoon was the platoon that relieved those guys.
Oh, shit.
Yep. And then that, because that operation went so bad, it created a lot of political problems within that theater in Afghanistan. And
What do you mean by political problems?
that op should have never happened. And that created political problems, not like politics like you're thinking, not like left, right shit, politics within the military. So, and this is way above my pay grade at the time, but there was basically a pissing match going on between the I'll just call him the head of the SEAL teams and the head of special operations, and the SEALs got pulled out of Afghanistan, and so we went over to Iraq.
Oh, so wow, that happened pretty quickly then.
I mean, that was the biggest loss in SEAL team history at the
Yeah.
time. You know what I mean? So I mean, it just, a lot of things went wrong, you know, on that operation, and it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. If people haven't seen that movie, it is a really good movie, but really scary too. I mean, it's like, you know, those are the best of the best, and that's still how it just goes to show you, like, if the planning's not there, if one thing's wrong, doesn't matter how great the operators are, they could still be sitting ducks there. It's really, it's something. But so you didn't see much action in Afghanistan, it sounds like.
No, I didn't see a whole lot. We did a couple of hits, snatched a couple of prisoners, did a couple of interrogations, but it wasn't like what I was expecting, where we were going to be kicking doors in every single night, multiple times a night. That didn't happen. Not for me there. There was too much, because of Red Wings, when that went down, everybody got very trigger shy. They didn't want that to happen again. You know what I mean? And so everything just it unfortunately affected the off tempo.
Right.
You know, and so we went to another theater and did a lot of good work there.
So it didn't really carry over to Iraq. You were kind of more free rolling there, it sounds like. Okay. How did you, I always ask this because I like to be very, very clear on the Iraq war and stuff. Like, I look at it as an enormous problem and a huge mistake in this country, but I separate that hardcore from the military. The military goes where they're told to go by the politicians in D.C. They go there to do a job, and like, I respect all the people that went there, so I just want to be very clear about that. But when you were going in there, you know, there was a lot of support in this country at the time, like bipartisan, even across the population, for a war in Iraq, because we thought Saddam had WMDs. We were told that and whatever. Was there a point, was there any point where you started to feel like, what the fuck are we doing here?
No, because, well, I definitely agree with you. You know what I mean? With kind of what the fuck were we doing there? A lot of good things happened there. I mean, what you didn't see is all the genocide and shit that was going on there that wasn't being reported. So I've been to places where they would take pregnant women, and if they didn't belong to a certain tribe, then they would hang them on meat hooks on the side of a wall and let them bleed to death. If you didn't belong to the certain religious group, they would
Sunni or
take
Shia.
men and they would put their heads on concrete blocks and throw cinder blocks off a third story and just watch these people's head explode. Just because, you know, and that shit happened everywhere.
This
all
was in
over the place.
04, 05 you're talking about? in
Oh
Iraq?
yeah. Oh yeah. And so we were killing the people that were doing that shit. You know, maybe we didn't get the WMDs, but we still saved a lot of fucking people who were being oppressed by Saddam and his regime.
Well, here's the question on that, because we could talk about that a little bit, take a sidebar here, but like, Saddam was obviously very bad, and as you just laid out, there's things that weren't even reported that were worse. His sons were even worse than he was, and they were going to be in power. So like, the country was, fair to say, pretty fucked. But when we went there, and I think it was more, looking at it and with hindsight 2020, I think it was more a leadership problem and more of a political problem than a military problem. But when we went there, the beginning of the mission, the military took care of business. And then you have, I always forget the goddamn guy's name, but the guy who's like, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. You have that guy who was the attaché or whatever of Iraq for America coming and saying, okay, anyone who's a Sunni can't be in government now. And then you create all this sectarian violence. You get a, vacuum sound. Guy like al-Zarqawi comes in, total psycho, the godfather of what became ISIS, I'm sure doing the exact shit you're talking about. And everything goes to hell because of that. It was like kind of an unwinnable situation at that point. The question is, as bad as that is, can we there's a lot of bad shit that happens in this world. There's genocide going on right now in other countries. Can we be in a position as America to try to go in and be the world's police in every single place? As painful as this is to say, because you don't want to see this shit happen, but like, is that even realistic to do that?
I mean, I felt pretty good doing it. When you see a mom who's, a couple of 3-year-olds got blown up and vaporized by a fucking bomb, you feel like you're doing good work. On the contrary, now what are we doing? Now we're in fucking Ukraine fighting for land that belongs to Ukraine, but the people that live in that land don't even want to be a fucking part of Ukraine. They want to be part of Russia. So what are we doing there?
Well, we're big air quotes, we're technically not there, but we're funding the whole thing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're talking about world police.
Yeah, that one's a weird one.
Yeah, it's weird, all right.
I agree.
So what, you know what I mean, though? Like, those people don't even want to be a part of Ukraine.
Yeah.
At all. They want to be part of Russia. But we're there. At least in Iraq, yeah. I don't think we should have been there. But I think we have more of a reason to be there than we do in Ukraine.
That's interesting. Yeah, because the clarification I was going to give at the beginning there is like, obviously you're doing a great thing when you're freeing stuff like that. I don't want that lost in this argument. It's just the question of what you got to at the end, which is,
And the thing that everybody forgets too, is these people were coming to our country to fuck us up. We were over there fighting them on their own turf so people like you didn't have to. Now, if we wouldn't have gone there, you would have seen a lot more violence in this country.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. You don't?
It's not. Maybe on the time period we would have. Here's how I look at it. I'm looking at it over a 15, 20-year period rather than the 5. I think on the 5, you're spot on. There could have been, not that Saddam was like the terrorist himself. In fact, he didn't like Al-Qaeda. But like, there's a hotbed for extremism going on for sure. But in going there, creating the sectarian violence that then happened, we didn't mean to do that, but that's what happened. That then birthed ISIS. We had Joby Warwick in here talking about that. He wrote the Bible on this, Black Flags.
The most fascinating terrorist figure I think I've ever come across. We're familiar with Bin Laden. Bin Laden and Zawahiri, then his number 2 guy, they were of a completely different type. These were people who were professionals. Bin Laden was an engineer. His number 2 was a medical physician, so they're educated, sophisticated people. They have sort of a strategic vision of this terrorist organization they're trying to create. Zarqawi was none of that. He was just a street tough.
And Zarqawi died in 2006, but like the formation was there. And then by 2014, again, journalists getting their heads chopped off in the middle of the desert.
When did Obama pull us out of Iraq?
Was it 2011? Is that right?
I don't know.
I'll check it.
But it's interesting.
Yeah.
A couple years after we pulled out, ISIS. Right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like you get, and we could talk about this with Afghanistan too. It's like you get into the endless war, and then the minute, now Afghanistan, they fucked up the pullout beyond belief, let's be honest. But still, like the Taliban was already starting to take control in a way of that country. You get out, now they take control, right? I would argue with Afghanistan, though, we absolutely had to go there, right? They're harboring the people that take the buildings down. You have to go there.
Well, actually, Pakistan was too, but
yeah, that's a weird one.
I mean, the thing is, like, you're not fighting a nation, you're fighting an ideology. And that ideology spreads from country to country. It's not Afghanistan. It's not Iraq. It's not Iran. It's not Yemen. It's not Pakistan. It's an ideology that spreads throughout.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what we were fighting. But I do agree with you. I don't think we should have been there. I think that was the military-industrial complex. I mean, Dick Cheney had a big hand in KBR.
Yeah.
And he's a fucking scumbag. Everything over there was Halliburton.
How quickly did you realize that?
Immediately.
I
didn't realize it so much in Afghanistan because I was in these very remote places. When I got to Iraq and I was like, holy shit, the construction. All the construction, which you don't realize how much construction is going on over there at that time, but every chow halls, meal rooms, planning rooms, barracks, everything over there was built by Halliburton. All the workers, everybody that makes the meals, Halliburton. Everybody that delivers the mail, Halliburton. All the logistics, Halliburton. Everything was Halliburton. All of it. The gas, the fuel. Who's fueling up the trucks? Who's fueling up the helicopters? Who's fueling up the planes? Halliburton. Who's feeding all these people? Halliburton. Who's building the places where these people sleep? Halliburton. Everything was Halliburton.
In plain sight, too. That's what's scary.
Yeah.
Did it in plain sight. He was literally like the CEO of the fucking company.
Yep.
And then VP. And then, WMD.
Yep.
Well, I'd say that's surprising, but it's not.
Nope.
We've seen shit like that. I just hate, I love the veterans and you guys do the ultimate sacrifice, going to fight for the country so that we don't have to fight here. And I hate when, then we have to Monday morning quarterback some things, righteously so, and you guys are stuck in the middle of it. Yeah. Because then, by the way, guess what? That's how the attitudes happen that then, someone like Eddie Gallagher's attacked in the media, right? And there's a narrative because it's like, oh, the military-industrial complex, the war machine. Let's do a story on that. But I don't see Dick Cheney in shackles or anything for kickbacks. I don't see any of these people who are investing in all the companies that profit off of this, who sit in fucking Congress and get information about it. I don't see them in shackles. To me, sitting in my seat here, armchair expert, that seems like a pretty obvious one to me where I'd start.
It's pretty complicated.
Yeah. Fair enough. But back to Iraq. So minus all the extracurriculars there in the war itself, you guys were way higher up tempo going in there. And are you like immediately, like what was the lay of the land at that point? Like what month did you get there?
Man, I don't remember. I know I spent Christmas there, so I guess right around probably late November, December.
Okay, so it wasn't at like the outset, like the initial invasion.
No.
Shit had gone down already, so you're going in on the ground. Did you notice right away that the sectarian violence had started to get out of control, or at what point did that start to become like, oh shit, there's something going on here that has nothing to do with Saddam?
Oh man, dude, you didn't have time for that shit. When you're in Baghdad in Iraq in that time period, you could just hear the car bombs going off all day, all night. Hear the gunshots, hear the gunfights, and it was just bombs, terrorists, suicide bombers, all the time. Every time you went anywhere. I mean, my asshole was about that big the entire time because I was like, today's going to be the day we're going to fucking eat it. I don't know why we're in these stupid vehicles. We should be in a helicopter or something, but we're not. We're in this fucking vehicle. We're going to get blown up. And because it was just, I mean, I'm not over exaggerating. I mean, it was bombs all night, all day. People coming back all fucked up. People seeing these vehicles getting blown up, seeing what's left of them, if anything. I mean, it was, this guy died, this guy died, this guy died, this guy died. And that's why we were so busy, is because we were killing these guys that were making the bombs. We were killing the guys that were planting the bombs. We were killing the guys that were detonating the bombs. And it was saving American lives.
Wow. Was there any pattern to it, or was every day very different, or every mission different setup, different lay of the land? Like,
yeah, we would go all over the country, you know, and to these conventional units, meaning like infantry units, non-special operations units, and these guys were just getting fucking hammered, man. And they didn't care who it was. If it was KBR delivering mail, they'd fucking blow them up. If it was just a supply chain route, you know, it's just somebody delivering vehicle parts, they would blow them up. They didn't care, you know. And so the units that were taking the most casualties, or the ones that would reach out to us, would, you know, be like, man, we're just getting fucking hammered over here. We need some help. So we would go in and take a couple of the guys at whatever unit we showed up. We worked with 10th Mountain a couple times. We worked with 4th ID a couple times, and a couple other ones that I can't remember. Sorry, but we would go in and we would hand select a couple of their guys, train them up. Hey, kit them out. Hey, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. Teach them how to basically plan a mission, take them out, kill some bad guys, come home, go to another spot they're getting hit at, kill those bad guys, come back, set them free. Be like, all right, we've taught you how to make a sniper hide, we've taught you how to snipe, we've taught you how to do a mission profile, how to plan the mission, how to go on the mission, how to target these fuckers, how to kill them, how to identify them, how to get your intel. And then we'd turn it over and be like, all right, you got this now. And then we go to the next place, do it all over again. Some of it was urban, some of it was out of buildings, apartment buildings, houses. One op, we were in a chocolate factory.
a chocolate factory?
Yeah, we hid in a chocolate factory. Guys were, there was another team that wound up taking over a brothel and fighting out of there. That was a disaster.
That's interesting.
They didn't realize it was a brothel, but then they had people they had guys knocking on the door like all day wanting to see their favorite lady friend. And luckily the head woman was actually, she was happy that we were there, so she would answer the door and tell them that they were closed for business today, and they were tired of bombs going off in the front yard, you know, and then everything out to being in the bush in ghillie suits. One place we were so
ghillie suits.
Yeah, ghillie. You ever seen a sniper stand up and they have the weeds and shit hanging off?
Yep.
That. I mean, there were times we were so well hidden we actually had goats eating the vegetation right out of our suits. Not even knowing we were there. Goat herders slapping them around and shit, literally right on top of us. Had no idea that we were there.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
that's nuts.
Yeah, so you never knew. I mean, it was either going to be an urban environment or a rural environment, and I don't really have a preference. They're both. I mean,
You got it done.
Yeah, we got it done.
So it sounds like obviously all different types of things is the answer, and a lot, like for your personal team, sounds like pretty successful missions over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that right?
Yeah.
So what would you have done like if you were in charge, if you were the general of the military in Iraq, what would you have done differently?
With what? I mean, what's
That's a good question.
Break it down a little bit more.
Sure. So we invade Iraq. That's done deal.
Like an overall strategy?
Yes.
I would have kicked 90% of KBR out of the fucking country, which I'm sure was impossible to do considering
Right.
Genie. But I would have made that a special operations war, and that's it.
So you wouldn't have had the major military boots on the ground. You would have had tactical.
Yep.
Interesting.
Everything would, minus Fallujah going in there with the Marines.
When was Fallujah again? 06, 07? Is that right?
I don't remember.
Something like that.
But the majority of that war should have been fought with special operations and only special operations. It would have just made things more effective. The politics shit wouldn't have been involved as much. Especially when the Obama administration came in, we really got our legs chopped out from under us. It got to the point where we could barely even defend ourselves. And that's when I really was like, what the fuck are we doing here? We had, that was when I got to the agency.
I was going to say you weren't in the SEALs at that point.
But I remember being in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, under the agency when the Marines were going to take that. That was going to be the biggest offensive force since Fallujah. And they came out with ROEs that said, if a terrorist is shooting at you and drops his weapon, you can't shoot back. And that just totally fucked and mind fucked these poor guys that had to go in and do that mission. Why the fuck are we here?
You're in the middle of a fire. I don't understand things like that. You're in the middle of firefights. Like, it doesn't really work like that.
Nobody does. Nobody understands it. But that's what I would have done if I was a general. I would have made this an aviation, drone, and special operations war.
Interesting. Now, when you're there, it was what, like 03 to 06 you were there?
Yeah.
Roughly? Did you have breaks where you came home?
Oh, yeah.
For a short, yeah. You have to have that interspliced in there, right?
Yeah.
And what made you want to get out in 06 and leave the SEALs?
Wasn't enough action.
Really?
Yeah.
So by the end, you weren't doing a ton of missions. You were just sitting around.
Oh, no, we were doing a ton of missions. But out of the 6 years, there was maybe 6 months of hard combat.
Interesting.
And I was like, at the time, that wasn't enough for me. I never wanted to see my first rotation. I went to Europe. I did a bunch of stuff. I went to Panama, I went to Haiti. Those were kind of cool. Then I went to Germany, and all that was chasing women and drinking booze and getting in bar fights. And
got in bar fights?
As fun as that was, I was like, what the fuck am I doing here, man? I didn't come for this shit. If I wanted to do this, I would have went to school and become a fucking frat boy. I came over to kick some ass and fight for my country, and that isn't what I was doing. And then we went to Greece, and for 2004, when the Olympics were there, and we came up with all these evacuation routes for the terrorist threat that was pretty imminent at the time. But that's not what I did. I didn't want to do that. It was cool. Yeah, I got to see the Olympics. I got to meet a bunch of the athletes. Me and my team designed the entire contingency plans and evacuation plans and all that if something were to happen. But I wasn't killing bad guys, and I didn't want to be there. And then we did the NATO convention in Turkey in 2004 as well. That wasn't exciting for me at all. It was a bunch of sniper overwatch for the president and the SecDef and Secretary of State and shit like that. And then we went to Afghanistan, and like I said, we got to see a little bit of shit there. Not a whole lot. Pretty uneventful for the most part. And then Iraq was the big ticket that I wanted to do. But I didn't want to give another 4 or 5 years of my life up to go sit on my ass in Germany and chase ass and drink booze. I was just like, this is not what it's cracked up to be. And that was my experience. That's not everybody's experience, So.
But you didn't, like you had been saying, it's not like you're like, well, I'm going to go to the agency now. There was time there. You said you went to the State Department for 5 minutes or something. And then I think did you tell me off camera you were in the private sector at some point too for a short time? Or was that afterwards, after everything?
That was, I did some anti-piracy stuff as well. When that whole thing was going on after the, what was it? The Maersk, Alabama. Captain Phillips.
Oh yeah.
After that, they realized there was a big problem with piracy, but that was also pretty boring. I mean, it's just you're just sitting on a ship waiting for pirates to come try to take it over, and you shoot them. It lasts like, I don't know, 30 seconds, if that. And so then I went back to the agency.
Yeah, because like just looking at it from the outside, I would think like, you go to leave the Navy SEALs, like, what are you going to, unless you have the plan to go to the agency right away, like, what'd you think you were going to find, like, back working in the States or something compared to that? Even if it wasn't the op tempo you wanted by the end, like, you didn't want to do 5 years where it wasn't as much, like, action, like, doesn't really get more potential for action, I would think, than that.
I mean, look, man, I was 24 years old.
Right.
Yeah. So that's all I knew.
Right. So you come back, you get in, you find your way into the agency. Now you're actually in action again. But I think the thing that I can't totally wrap my head around as much as I hear it, and I probably won't be able to wrap my head around it with whatever answer you give, but when you hear a lot of veterans talk, like across anything, I'm not just talking about Navy SEALs, Special Forces guys, infantrymen, whatever. They talk about war zones and they highlight that war is hell and all these things, as they should, and you guys recognize that. You've seen it. But there's also almost like the paradox to it that like, but we wanted to be there. And there was no place in the world we wanted to be besides that.
Yeah.
What do you think that is that like burns inside you that needs to be in the middle of something that is like the worst shit you could possibly be seeing in the world at that time? But you're there and you belong there.
I mean, a lot of guys consider it to be a privilege to be in combat. And that's just something that if you haven't experienced it, you'll never understand it. There's nothing more real than being in those type of situations. And you come to find what you're capable of, how much courage you actually have, what are you actually willing to do. I mean, you could sit there and think about it all. I would have done this, I would have done that, but you don't really fucking know how you would react if I whipped out a gun right now and pointed it at your head, or we got into a gunfight and you'd been training for this for years and years and years. And then you experience it. It is a privilege to be able to fight in that capacity, alongside the guys that you consider your family, and you find a lot out about yourself as a man that most men they'll never know how they would have reacted, and so. I wouldn't take it back.
That's awesome. That actually is a really, really good answer. I think, it's nice and it's something that's great about your platform. Guys like me can watch that and listen to all these different people from all the ends of the military come to that kind of conclusion. No matter what their background is, what they did, what they didn't do. It's in the same, there are different answers, but it's in the same wavelength. Like it's something bigger than you. And I think that's what it takes to be able to, you know, be an 18-year-old who's like, yeah, I'm going to sign my life to go fight for my country. I mean, it's like the ballsiest thing you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was 18, I mean, Christ, man, wouldn't have even been a thought to do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what's going on at 18. But you're like, fuck it, we're gonna become a SEAL. That's pretty cool.
Well, thank you.
But what about, like, you've been really open on your platform, not just through your guests, but with yourself about like your own experience with. We highlighted a little bit of this earlier, but like, you know, taking it home with you. You know, being in war zones and high octane situations for 15 years, pretty much, and then shutting it down in 2015 and coming home and being a civilian and still having, I don't know, maybe some of the things that you had to do every day now hitting you because you get to think about it for the first time. Like, how bad did the experiences with PTSD get for you?
They got pretty bad. I mean, you know, when you come home, it's not just all the traumatic events that you've experienced and all the things that you had to do and all the things that you had to see and shit that maybe you could have done something about that you didn't. And it's also, I mean, you're stripped of your identity, you know, that you've put so much into that, so much blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, just to get to the point where you have the opportunity to go into combat as a spec operator. I mean, that alone is, you know, a grueling process, and then to experience it and to experience loss and you come home and you don't feel appreciated at all. And all you hear are everybody's opinions on why we shouldn't be there. And you see people like Gallagher and these Blackwater guys get fucking railroaded. And it's, man, it can build a lot of resentment. A lot of resentment. And so you're dealing with all of this shit. You know what I mean? I mean, fuck, man, you can't even get medical care when you get home because the VA is a fucking disaster and nobody gives a shit. You don't ever hear anybody talking about that, do you?
Not enough.
All you hear about is, oh, we got to do something for these people because they can't get their shit together. You know, we got to make it easier. We got to drop standards. We got to fucking, you know, and it's like, what the fuck, man? What about the people that actually give a shit about this fucking country? What about them? Nobody cares. VA's still a disaster. It always will be a fucking disaster. Nobody gives a shit except other veterans, and we have to lift ourselves up because nobody else will do it for us, you know, and support each other, and we're good at that, you know, in a lot of ways, but it's tough, man, to have all these different feelings and experiences happening to you, and then feeling all that shit on top of it, and having to reinvent yourself. I mean, what do you do? What do you do as a fucking washed up Navy SEAL CIA guy? What do you do?
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. The skills don't fucking translate. You gotta start a business, but I mean, you know how hard that shit is. Nobody's gonna tell you how to do it. I mean, not that, and none of these guys expect them to, but some people just don't have it in them, you know, but these skills, they don't translate. So you have to start over. You go from the apex of warfighting, what you go from what people dream about being. I mean, fantasizing about it when you're little, playing G.I. Joes and watching the fucking Vietnam movies and watching shit like Black Hawk Down and Lone Survival and all these things, right? Nowadays, what else are they watching? Benghazi, all that kind of stuff, you know? And then you come home and it's just all stripped away from you, and it's time to start over. Where do you start? What do you do? Go back to school with a bunch of 18-year-old dipshits, you know, It doesn't. You don't fit in anywhere.
I think, from the outside, it seems like there's nothing that can even slightly approach that adrenaline. That's one thing. But the other thing is the sense of purpose. What I'm hearing in that answer you're giving is like the purpose is gone. Because think of it this way. Let's say you had a goal day one. Oh, I'm going to go start business X. Make it worth $20 million in 10 years. That sounds cool, but at the end of the day, it's like it's a business with some money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not... You can't recreate the life and death importance. Right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And the stuff that you would think that it would translate to doesn't. Police, FBI, these organizations where you think that they would be like, all right, we have these guys who've been operating at the apex of warfare. They don't want us because they think we're a bunch of loose cannons. When really, we are like the premier experts at target identification and not shooting civilians, and way better than anybody else out there. The precisions that it takes to do those type of operations. You don't just go in there and just fucking smoke everybody. You're processing every single room. You're reading every single room, every step that everybody's making, every movement, all of it. There's no room for error, and then you come home and you think maybe I'll go work for the FBI or DEA or police department. I'll be a SWAT guy. They don't hire these guys
because they're afraid of if they're fucked up or something.
Yeah, they're afraid of the psychological stuff, which is fucking ridiculous. We're just doing it. We were just doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then 2, egos.
What do you mean egos?
For a guy like, let's just take Kyle Morgan, for example. The knowledge that guy has and the level that he was operating at would be beneficial to every police department in the fucking country. And not just him, all these guys that have been on my show. Me, Shipley, Eddie Penny, Nick Lavery, all of them. This active shooter stuff, if people would hire these guys, would be dropped dramatically. But they're not going to do it because they're going to come in and tell these departments how fucked up they are. You know what I mean? How outdated their tactics are, how they need to change things, and that's not going to go good. That's going to ruffle feathers, and they don't want that shit. And man, this is a big subject to tackle, man. But as far as coming home, but it's all of these things, and because you think it would just carry over, right? Like they would love to have these guys, because that's what I thought. They don't, and then it fucks with you because they don't want you, and you don't know. It's like why? Like I could bring so much to the table here, and then bam, there you go. Loss of purpose. Then you have nothing but time on your hands to drink, drug, and relive all the shit that you've been dealing with. And it turns into this fucked up cycle that kills a lot of us. I've had more friends kill themselves than I have died in combat. By a long shot.
You're not the first person I've heard that from. I've heard that from a lot of veterans. That blows my fucking mind.
There's a real crisis going on in the veteran community, and it's been going on for a long time. Yeah. And you never fucking hear about it ever.
You said something really interesting in there a few minutes ago, though, when you were talking about how you're mentioning like the FBI, police department stuff. They think these guys are loose cannons or whatever, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, but it's like, what do you mean? They were just there. they're translating right over.
Yeah.
You get them when they come back, you translate it right over. And this is really telling to me because I don't remember who said it. Someone really smart a long time ago said it. But there's a quote I think about a lot where they say the hardest thing for a man to do is sit alone in a room with nothing but his thoughts and be okay. And from the outside, it seems like that is probably a key trigger to the downward spiral that can happen when guys do lose their purpose and then don't have opportunity and aren't wanted. Whereas, not to say like, oh, let's kick the can down the curb, that's or down the road, that's not what I mean, but like if guys did kind of have that in a good way, like rotating door to come back to, where like, oh, you can go here, you can go there, yada, 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 and they could kind of stay with it. They're not in a war zone now, stakes are lower, but like their expertise is used. They feel that purpose. It's almost like I don't want to say the wrong words here, but it's almost like a soft landing from the hardest ride. Whereas when you come back and then you're alone with your thoughts, you're not wanted, you don't have a purpose, everything creeps in, it's like a crash landing from that ride. That's how it seems to me, at least. I don't know if that's fair to say. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good way to put it, you know. But it's there's just so many things going on all at once, you know. It's like your entire life got ripped out from under you. Nobody understands you. Nobody understands why you get pissed off all the time. Nobody understands why you're so passionate about what people are saying about what's going on over there, because they don't fucking know, because the media doesn't report what's actually going on, and then you listen to these uninformed opinions, and you're dealing with all the trauma that you've had to deal with, and all the shit that you've seen, and friends are still fucking dying, and then your buddies are killing themselves, and especially for these guys that are getting out now, they know what. Back when I got out the first time, you know, out of the teams, and I didn't know any of this shit. I was just dealing with it. But now these guys know, like, they know suicide's a real threat. I mean, I could just go on and on and on about people that are some of the strongest men that I looked up to, and that you never, ever in a million fucking years would think that they would do this. And time again, it's just gone. Another one gone. Another one gone. Another one gone. And you know that could be you.
Did you ever struggle with that at all personally?
Yeah. With suicide?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to kill myself in my car.
How long ago was that?
Right after I left the agency. I left the car running in the garage, leaned the seat back, and after a night of drinking, and somehow I didn't fucking die. I woke up in my bed because my entire house smelled like gasoline, and went downstairs, saw my gun on my couch, so I was probably going to shoot myself there. Then went out to the garage. The garage door was hot to the touch. Thought if I opened the door, I was going to, I don't know why I thought this, probably because I was still fucking drunk, but thought if I opened the door, I might be blown to smithereens. Opening the door, got in there, saw my car was still running, saw the seat laid back. Remembered leaning the seat back. Turns out it got so hot in there, my gas tank melted and the gas was leaking onto my muffler. And so I obviously shut the car off. And yeah, I didn't die.
Well, I'm glad you're here. That's wild, though.
It's good to be here.
But it doesn't, you know, I do hear, and it's not just with veterans, by the way, it's with a lot of different people on this, like, especially when you're feeling certain types of ways or whatever it may be, you know, the drinking doesn't help with it. And so that situation, I mean, you're saying right there you had a long night of drinking and then you don't really know why. But you just,
but every night and every day is a long day and a long night of drinking back then. That's how you cope. It's a coping mechanism. And there was a lot more than that. There was drugs, there was benzos, opiates, cocaine, booze, whatever. Whatever I could get my hands on to make me not think about things.
And that was the only time you tried it?
Yeah. That I actually tried to kill myself. Yeah, that was the only time.
Why do you think what do you think saved you?
God.
Was that something you had believed in growing up or something you found?
That's something I found. But are you talking about that night?
What?
Yeah.
No, in general, that time period.
Because I mean, I should be dead. You know, you don't live through you
No.
don't live through that. So that's the only explanation I've been able to come up with.
It's an amazing thing that, you know, you can't explain sometimes, but I do feel like maybe the universe intervenes in some things.
Yeah.
You know, you're not supposed to make it through something. I'm sure you probably had moments like that, even in the military and in certain spots. But there's a reason for everything, and I see what you're doing now. And again, far from just your own story, but all these stories of all these guys you bring on and you give a light to, and they really open up in there. Sometimes for 6-7 hours on these episodes, you're doing a great thing for more than just veterans too. You're doing a great thing for people to get aware that, you know, they're not alone in how they think. They're not alone in their own struggles. There are the strongest dudes in the world, in some cases, are going through this. And I can imagine that, you know, we've had a few people in here before you also really open up on that, and it made a huge difference for some people. And I don't take lightly at all the messages I get, and it wasn't coming from my mouth.
Yeah.
You know, just like, hey man, that changed me, or like that. I've had messages where like that really saved me. Like hearing that, I know that sounds crazy, but like that man spoke the exact words that spoke to me and like spoke what I'm going through. And I think the more you do things like this, whether you're going on someone else's show or using your own platform to do it, it's an amazing thing. So I couldn't encourage that enough. And I really appreciate you opening up on that here. Cause I know that's a heavy thing, and you know, it's not really something like from the outside when I hear this stuff, it's not really something you can fully explain. It's just you get to a point, whatever it is. Obviously for you, that particular situation was shortly after leaving. It sounds like, I think you said that, right?
Yep.
You know, that's an extreme switch.
Yep.
You know?
I think, you know, the best advice I could give anybody getting out, who knows are going to struggle with this stuff, is be open and really work on reinventing yourself. You've got to just keep pushing forward.
And the one other thing I wanted to ask about is another thing you've been really open about with this for your own Zen, so to speak. But you did a psychedelic experience.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, about a year ago, something like that?
Yeah, it was a year ago.
What made you want to do that?
I was going back. I mean, it's a constant struggle. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the only time that I legitimately can say, yeah, I tried to kill myself. That doesn't mean I haven't thought about it several times, you know, and thought about how I would do it, stuff like that. And you, after being out for a while, you see the cycles, and you can tell when you're starting to slip and fall back into that. And it'll happened then, just happened again a couple weeks ago. I mean, and it'll happen again. You know what I mean? I'll start to see the signs. My wife will start to pick up the signs, and it's just an ongoing struggle, you know. And so that's what led me to it.
And what did you do specifically? I forget. Did you do psilocybin or?
I did ibogaine
Ibogaine.
and then 5-MeO DMT.
Okay, and what was that? Like, take me through that experience. Like, you went down to Mexico or Costa Rica to do it?
Yeah, I went down to Mexico and did it, and it was, I mean, it was nothing like I expected it. I thought, you know, I thought it was kind of hokey. You know, I've done a lot of drugs. I never did any drugs until after I left the teams. But I'll just say this, man, it changed me. You know, it changed me in a lot of ways. It made me a lot more open to things. It made me a lot more tolerant to things. I quit drinking. It took a lot of I was forced to face a lot of the trauma. I haven't drank coffee, hadn't drank any alcohol, haven't had any opiates, hadn't had any benzos, haven't done any of that stuff. You know?
Was that the goal, to stop any substance?
No, that was just a byproduct. I just wanted to be back in the moment. I had just had my son was just born, and my mind was elsewhere, and I didn't want it to be elsewhere. I wanted to be at home with my son, present in the moment, and it did that. The goal was accomplished, and that was a life-changing experience.
I've never heard.
Have you ever done them?
No. It's actually a big regret. I wrote my this Saturday in college when all my boys were doing it together. I wrote my term paper that day. And I actually do regret that. I would like to. But I will say that everyone I've spoken with who has done it, especially like in a medical setting like that, which I think is the right way to do it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've not had one person not tell me that it was the most profound experience they ever had.
Yeah.
I hope I said that right. Basically, they all said it was profound as hell.
Yeah.
And it opened up, like they all explain it like it opened up things that they weren't looking to open up. Like you say, you weren't going down there like quit alcohol or something, but you just did. There's something that happened that you were just like, you know what, this isn't for me. And that's a positive, it's an amazing positive thing.
I mean, you hear the hippies say, you know, it unlocks your brain. And I always thought that was like a figure of speech or something. It literally unlocks your fucking brain. And like scientifically, legitimately unlocks your brain. And some of the stuff that this is doing for guys is with, you know, traumatic brain injury, being blown up, you know, not all the pistons are firing up there. And you get these brain scans and you'll see like black spots where there's zero brain activity. All of those spots are lighting up again, and they're doing studies, and it's being proven, you know, that it's bringing guys back to who they are.
It's something that I would like to, and I hope a lot of people do. You know, I'm just one guy, but I'd like to use the platform to get awareness on that. And I know you're doing a great job with that. A lot of people got to do it because it is especially something that seems to have a significant impact on veterans in particularly.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
For their health care and to fight back against the epidemic of veteran suicide and things like that. And when I hear that over and over again, it tells me why the fuck are we not normalizing this here? The fact, like, it pisses me off that you got to go down to Mexico to do that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. You know, that should be something that is given to you.
Yeah. Well, I know they're working on some things,
Yeah.
and hopefully some of them pass. I think they have VA trials happening, so that'll be good. And yeah, hopefully Big Pharma doesn't fight back too hard, because this shit actually works, and everything that they've developed up to this point is not